Take me to the place in the middle of the sun. And we'll sing this song, sing it one by one.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for listening, guys.
We are happy to have you here, where we have another great show in store for you, where we welcome Mort Fertel. And
welcome back.
Yeah, he was on way back.
Long
4
time
years ago.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago. One of our very first few episodes. So
I can't believe we've been doing this for that long.
I know.
It's a little break in between.
Yeah, it's crazy. Mort Fertel is the creator of Marriage Fitness, a relationship renewal system that has been used by millions of people in marital crisis. And he is also married and has 5 children and lives in Maryland.
And today we went into the conversation with the idea that we were going to talk about what to do when you don't fulfill your partner's love language. And we certainly talk about that, but a lot of the show was just a really great conversation about how we can love our partner better. Or if you're feeling that you're not getting the love from your partner, how you can communicate that. And so it was just really great conversation and some great perspectives that Mort gives us in today's episode.
So if you think you have your partner's love language nailed down, this is even more of a reason to listen to this show, because he kind of throws us a curveball. So we're not going to leak it to you. We want you to listen to find out, but it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so check it out. And as always, we appreciate you guys for tuning in, telling your friends and family about the show. That's how we continue to grow. And we just really appreciate you guys. Enjoy today's show.
Today's show is brought to you by our online course, Spark My Relationship. Create more passion, improve your communication, and build a stronger, more intimate connection with your partner in less than 90 days. We've collaborated with 15 therapists and psychologists to bring you the strategies marriage therapists teach their clients. To unlock a special offer only for I Do Podcast listeners, visit sparkmyrelationship.com/unlock. That's sparkmyrelationship.com/unlock. Hi, Mort. Thank you so much for joining us back on the show.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Mort, today we are going to focus in and talk about how to recover from not fulfilling our partner's love language. And we thought a good place to start would be having you tell us about love languages and why they're so important.
Sure. So, different people like to be loved in different ways. For some people, they like physical affection. Other people like acts of service. Other people like, spending quality time. Everybody likes, I think, all of the love languages to some degree, but some of the love languages are more important to some than to others. It's probably not a bad idea to try to be sensitive to and be aware of what the primary love languages are of your for your spouse. We should probably give credit where credit is due. By the way, this whole term love languages should be credited to not to me but to Gary Chapman. He's the author of the book The 5 Love Languages, which is a good book. And he identifies those love languages.
If this is the first time any of the listeners are hearing that the term love languages, then I cannot tell you how valuable it's been in understanding myself and improving Sarah and I's relationship, and super critical to understand how you receive love and what makes you feel most loved, so that you can communicate that to your partner and vice versa. So certainly something important to do and as a foundation. And so someone hearing this for the first time and then they're like, oh man, I didn't even know that. And then realizing I haven't been fulfilling my partner's love language. And it's probably not the best feeling when you realize that your partner receives love in a completely different way than you've been giving it. It's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, and that's why you're listening, to change that. But what can we do if we have been neglecting our partner's love language. And I say that from a place of, we know it's not on purpose most of the time, but it feels like a tough place.
Can I just make one other point before I answer that question?
Of course.
Okay, great. Because I think it'll add an interesting flavor to our conversation. I just want to make a point that while I just recommend it, and I do like very much Gary Chapman's work in that book. I do want to make a distinction between his approach there and my approach, because I think it's an interesting point, interesting insight, interesting point. I actually don't think it's so crucial to really know your spouse's love language. And that may sound strange coming from me, but I'll tell you why I don't think it's so crucial. I don't think it's so crucial because I think it's much more important to know all the love languages and to be a loving person. And if you know the love languages, if you know how to love, and you are committed to being a loving person, then that means that you are loving in all of the languages. And you don't have to be so on target about your spouse's love languages because you have them all covered and your spouse will be fulfilled. The difference is you may not know exactly why your spouse is so fulfilled because you're loving them in all the different ways, but they will be fulfilled. And it's a slight tweak in the way one can look at this, but I think it's meaningful. I think it's a much better approach for a person to just say to themselves, I want to be a loving person. I'm committed to being a loving person. I'm committed to learning what that means to be a loving person. And I'm going to be loving. And I think if a person approaches it that way, then they don't have to spend really any time or energy trying to figure out what's your love languages and am I on target or no, do it differently. And a person could drive themselves crazy.
I love that you mentioned that approach of just being a loving person in general. But what would you say to somebody like Chase and I, for example? He could care less if I get him gifts. He's more of a physical touch loving person. So would I be exerting energy, giving him gifts and doing things like that if it doesn't really, not that he doesn't care, but it's not as meaningful to him as it would be if I was to come up to him and rub his shoulder or give him a hug or something like that?
I think you should do both. And I understand that the physical affection, rubbing his shoulders, for example, will be more meaningful. Okay, fine. So that'll be more meaningful to him. As I said in the very beginning, different love languages are important to people on a continuum, relatively speaking. I kind of doubt that Chase doesn't like getting gifts. That would be pretty unlikely.
I like it.
Yeah, right. He likes it. And like I said, I think everybody appreciates to some degree all the love languages. And I just think it makes life much simpler and all of us better people if we just say to ourselves, I'm going to understand what it means to be a loving person, and I'm going to demonstrate all of those love languages in my relationships.
It's funny that you say that because as before the interview, we were reviewing the love languages and going over them. And I was thinking to myself, I kind of like all of these. So it would kind of be amazing if, we each did all of these in our relationship.
Right. Well, I didn't want to get into that, but now that you bring it up, that's one of the reasons why I prefer the approach that I just mentioned, because the way Gary Chapman presents it, and again, you should read the book. He's great. The content is great. But the way he presents it, it's as if a person only needs to be loved in one way. And I just don't think people are that simple. I think people are much more complex and that they really do need to be loved in multiple ways. Also, just another point, most people have more than one person in their life that they want to love. Now, don't get the wrong idea. I'm the marriage guy and I'm all for monogamy. But we have children and we have a mother and a father and a brother and a sister. And we want to be in loving relationships with them also. Now, of course, it's different in the marital relationship, but again, if I am a overall well-versed, loving person, so then it's likely that those other people in my life will feel loved by me as well. And again, I don't have to analyze each and every person and try to figure out, what their love language is. I just am myself, and I've got them all covered.
Yeah, asking ourselves how we can just be an overall more loving person is a great perspective to take in. If someone listening is like, yeah, I would love my partner to ask themselves that, but doesn't seem like they are, how can they express that to their partner that like, hey, I'm not feeling loved by you?
A good way to do it is to talk about the last time they did feel loved by them. In other words, if you're feeling like, Sarah, or Chase, if you're feeling that Sarah hasn't been physically affectionate lately, and you're yearning for that, and you're missing that, and you're disappointed by that. So rather than being critical, which is never a good idea, you could say, do you remember last week when, spontaneously I was sitting at the desk and you came up behind me and started rubbing my shoulders, and it wasn't just for 2 seconds, but you actually stayed for like 5 minutes and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed. I just loved that. Like, did you know that made my week? So to sort of remember when kind of experience, basically what you're doing is you're putting back on her radar how important it is for you that she be physically affectionate. And you don't have to tell her that she hasn't done that in a week. She knows. She knows. And it's just a much more positive way, a much healthier way. The worst thing in the world in a relationship is what I call the 3 C's: criticize, condemn, and complain. We mean well when we do it, but I would challenge everybody listening to take an honest look at their lives and their relationships and ask themselves if any time they've ever done it, that it's worked. And I can almost guarantee you that the answer is it has not. It doesn't work ever. And so that's not the way to go.
I love that using a positive statement towards your partner to express that you want to feel affection or love in a certain way it's a much more productive way to have that conversation. And what would you tell a partner on the other side who's thinking to themselves, yeah, I have not been the best husband or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend over the last week, month, years? How can they begin to start to rebuild that love?
At the risk of sounding overly simplistic, just start now. Make a change now. I had this discussion with someone this morning in a private session. I was explaining that the quality of a relationship is determined much more by how we act in the future than it is by how we acted in the past. If you think about it, this is self-evident, but you just have to really think about it. If you think about it, it's the more recent encounters in a relationship that weigh more heavily on how we feel about the relationship at any given time, which is, thank God that's true. Like that's very hopeful. That's very optimistic, because that basically means that in any relationship at any time, I can significantly upgrade the quality of the relationship just by focusing on the next encounter. And again, I think this is self-evident if you think about it. I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship where there's this wonderful history, and then all of a sudden something really bad happens. So what will be your primary thoughts and feelings about that relationship over the course of the next few days? It'll be bad. It's as if that long history of all that good stuff is just non-existent. And the reverse is true too. You could have a lot of pain, betrayal, hurt, disappointment in a relationship. And if you have a transformative experience of love and forgiveness and hope and a second chance, and all that just happens in a few hours, what are you going to be feeling over the next few hours or even few days? The chances are good you're going to be feeling love, hope, forgiveness. It's a beautiful thing. It's a tremendous gift from God, the way He created relationships. Quality of our relationship, again, is much more dependent upon how we act in the future than it is about how we act in the past. That's why when people say, it's too broken, it can't be fixed, too much water under the bridge, too much has happened, it's an unsophisticated thing to say. It's just not true. I mean, I know there's real hurt there and real feelings that are driving that comment, but as a practical matter, it's just not true. That's just not the way relationships work.
So, say a partner who hasn't felt loved, they express to their partner, hey, you remember that time last week when you rubbed my shoulders? I really liked that. You do the example like you gave. And then they don't see a change. What could be some next steps?
Before we continue on, we're going to take a short break to tell you about our sponsors. Today's episode is sponsored by Iconic, where you can shop name brand glasses, contacts, and sunglasses for the best possible price. Iconic seamlessly connects your eyewear, your vision insurance coverage, and your doctor's expertise with their network of over 38,000 eye doctors. Use their virtual try-on tool to see yourself in your favorite pair of glasses. Enjoy the view and visit iconic.com/ido. That's Iconic, EYECONIC.com/ido to shop 60 high quality name brands, including Nike, Ray-Ban, Oakley, and AccuView. Get free shipping and returns, price matching, and a complimentary frame adjustment. Plus, save up to $220 when you apply your insurance. Don't have insurance? Use the promo code IDO to get 10% off your entire order. Iconic is looking out for your eyes. Today's episode is also brought to you by our course, Spark My Relationship.
You're listening to the podcast, so you probably want to create more passion, improve your communication, and build a stronger, more intimate connection with your partner. And if you can do it in less than 90 days, even better. We say it all the time on the show. A mediocre relationship is easy, but a passionate, authentic, and satisfying relationship takes work. It doesn't just happen on its own. And that's why Sarah really did all the heavy lifting on this.
And you
created this course with the therapists that we've had on the show to really help you with the specific tools, exercises needed to create the lasting and positive improvements rather than just listening to the show and not really implementing them. This is a great way to have some accountability in a structured format to put the tools that we talk about on the show into practice.
You can do this in 90 days. You can do it from home, and it is self-paced. So it is perfect for turning up the heat in your relationship, having some fun together, and really revolutionizing your intimacy and communication. And like Chase mentioned before, we've worked with 15 psychologists and therapists to bring you the strategies that marriage therapists teach their clients. And just some of those strategies are how to eliminate unhelpful old habits, develop mindful awareness to help improve stress management, learn healthy and successful communication tools, create a deeper, more intimate bond, and strengthen your couple microculture and future together. So for our listeners only, we are offering a special promo for the course. You can find it at sparkmyrelationship.com/unlock, and you can access a special pricing just for you guys. So again, check out sparkmyrelationship.com/unlock for your special promo.
Check it out. Don't waste any more time. Do it.
Another strategy, yeah. I've got two more I could suggest. I'll just start with one. You tell me if you want another one. It's a good idea in a relationship to demonstrate on a fanatical level the very thing that you really want to see from your spouse. So in other words, if you want your spouse to be very physically affectionate, then be very physically affectionate. Create a culture in the family, in the marriage, where physical affection is just what we do. It's how it happens. It's all over the place. You know, it's like in our home, we try very hard. We have this phrase, always speak in a calm voice. It's a mantra. Over and over again. Always speak in a calm voice. Always. Always speak in a calm voice. And so whether you're calling somebody to the dinner table, whether you're upset with them, whether, they hurt you, we always speak in a calm voice. Now we have, 5 kids who have been various ages through the years. This is not an easy quality to promote in the home, but we do it. And what's my point? My point is that I think we've done a pretty decent job, so much so that when somebody raises their voice in our home, it just feels so out of place. It's as if they don't belong. Like it doesn't belong. It's as if that person just stepped into a culture that, and they're from a different culture. Like that's just not how we do things here. So in every family, in every marriage, there is a culture, and the culture impacts what we feel comfortable doing and not doing. 100 years ago in America, nobody would walk outside in shorts. Why not? I don't know. It's just nobody did it. It just wasn't the fashion. It wasn't the thing. So you would feel odd. Today, nobody would think twice. What's the difference? There really is no difference except that it's just the norm. Well, one person doesn't have the ability to influence, the fashion culture in America, but we do have the ability to dramatically influence the culture in our marriage because there's only 2 of us. So circling back to your point, if it's the culture to be physically affectionate, then you have a good chance of really influencing your spouse to being part of that culture. And by the way, the reverse is true as well. If your spouse is behaving in ways that are contributing to a negative culture, you want to be careful to reject that culture. Let's say, for example, your spouse uses inappropriate language or raises their voice. It would be natural to follow their lead, raise your voice, and use inappropriate language. But it would be natural, but it wouldn't be wise. Right? You want to do the opposite. You want to reject that culture and provide leadership rather than following. So anyway, that's the second thing you could do, is to demonstrate in an obsessive way the very quality that you want to appear. The third one is, you've probably heard this one before. It's not unique to my teachings, but you can use an I feel sentence. There's 2 parts to an I feel sentence. The first part is I feel, and then you finish the sentence authentically. So I feel bad we're picking on Sarah all this time, but let's say Chase is feeling lack of physical affection. So Chase might say, I feel starved for affection, something like that. So the I feel sentence is the first step. Second step is the hard part, and that is to be quiet, not say another word. 99% of people that use the I feel sentence, they blow it. They blow it by opening their mouth after the I feel sentence, because almost always what happens after, or almost always what they say after I feel is, you did, you are, you always, you never. They get into the 3 C's. They're criticizing, condemning, and complaining, which we already discussed never works. But if you just stick with the I feel sentence, so your spouse is not stupid. They'll make the connection between your feeling and their behavior or lack of behavior. And the result is they'll feel responsible. They'll feel like, oh, I could do something. I could be my spouse's hero. I could change my behavior and alleviate their ill feeling. And there's just a natural trigger inside a person's conscience that compels them to do that. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will do it, but there's at least some compulsion in that direction, which is productive. I want to point out that when you use an I feel sentence, your spouse will make the connection between your feeling and their behavior. And why is that so significant? It's significant because if they make the connection, if they see that their behavior caused that feeling, then it's true. As opposed to when you say it. Right? If you say it, then they can argue it, and they will. But if they say it, or at least see it, then it's true. And when you use the I feel sentence and you you don't make the connection in their mind, they make the connection in their mind. When you make the connection, they doubt it. When they make the connection, it's true.
What if they're completely unaware of it and it doesn't turn into a smooth conversation where one person is, expressing with I statements, and then it immediately, because the other person is not aware, turns into a feeling blamed and criticizes, and then it just goes down a rabbit hole of that dialogue instead of an actual beneficial one for the relationship?
Well, if you succeed to avoid the 3 C's, criticize, condemn, and complain, I'm not sure how that could happen. I'm also not sure how a person could, I think this is more of a theoretical question. I think in practice, I'm not sure that it really happens that way. I mean, I know just in my own experience, if my wife does something, maybe I should say this that might help. The I feel sentences have to be right there on the spot, on the heels of the action that was hurtful. So my wife says she's going to be home at 6. She doesn't come home until 6:30. She didn't call. She didn't text. I was worried. I didn't know where she was. And I said, she walks in the door at 6:30, and I say, I feel ignored, or I feel worried. It's not possible that she wouldn't understand why I feel worried and ignored. It's just obvious.
Is there ever any value in forming some kind of apology to your partner if you've been neglecting their love language or making them feel loved? Or should the partner expect anything like that? Obviously, we don't want to have crazy expectations, but where could an apology come in, perhaps?
Yeah, so those are 2 different questions. They're both great questions. We'll start with the last one, the second one. That's easier. And you really already answered it, which is it's never a good idea to have expectations. The bigger your expectations, the more likely you are for problems and disappointment. So not such a good idea to expect this or expect that. We should expect a good recipe for success in life, not just in marriage, is the more we expect of ourselves and the less we expect of others, the more successful we're likely to be. But should we issue an apology 100%? The question is, which is not such a simple question, what does it mean to apologize? See, I think you probably meant, should I say I'm sorry? So in my experience, I'm sorry are pretty much useless words. What really matters is how you act in that experience of remorse. If you're really demonstrating remorse, then you don't need to say I'm sorry. And if you do say I'm sorry and not demonstrating remorse, then you've wasted 2 words. So yes, it's important to apologize, very important, but, and I fear this is going to go beyond what we can cover in the few minutes of a podcast, but it raises a gigantic question, fascinating question, gigantic question, which is, what does it really mean to apologize effectively in a relationship? And I can answer quickly what it doesn't mean. It definitely does not mean to simply utter the words, I'm sorry. That's useless without the act of remorse behind it.
Are there any other things that someone that hasn't felt loved by their partner can say or do to begin that healing process? You've given us some great tips in just creating the change you want by loving your partner in the ways you want to be loved, and then explaining to them, hey, that thing you did last week. But maybe someone that feels a little bit more, I don't want to say like dramatic as hopeless, but like that they're in a deep hole and their relationship is really suffering. Are there any steps they can take to get out of that situation?
I hope this will be an answer to your question. I don't know if it's so much steps as much as sort of a paradigm, but I think for someone in that situation you just described, it's really, really important to realize that your spouse is telling themselves a story that they're using to justify the way they're treating you. It's unlikely, it's possible, but highly unlikely, that your spouse is a total jerk. It's highly unlikely that your spouse is a bona fide narcissist. It's highly unlikely that, your spouse is evil. What's much, much, much more likely, 99.99999% of the cases, is your spouse has a perspective on the situation that results in them feeling clean. They feel justified in treating you the way they're treating you. And it would really help if you could try, it's hard, but try to understand their story. Because if you can understand their story, then you can go about ruining their story. And when you ruin their story, they lose their justification for treating you that way. And all of a sudden they start to feel compelled to reciprocate and to be decent. So it's important to realize that your husband, your wife, they're not evil. They feel justified, and understand why, and begin to really address the factors that they think are giving them license to treat you this way. And if you can address them and eliminate them, then you'll create the dynamic in their conscience where they won't feel comfortable behaving that way anymore. And that can often be the turning point.
I think it's something that is important to remember, even if you're in an unhappy relationship, because there are times where, Chase will do things and I'll feel frustrated, but then I just always remind myself that he doesn't have bad intentions, that he is just human and possibly unaware of why it's affecting me. So I think that's something to just always remember, really in a romantic relationship, at work, just in general.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great, great point. Some people are so exacting and have such high expectations that everybody around them be perfect all the time that they're just never going to succeed in a long-term relationship. To succeed in a long-term relationship, you have to be forgiving. You have to be somewhat easygoing. You can't hold everybody accountable to everything all the time. Nobody will ever meet your expectations. That was nothing new. I was just elaborating on the point that you brought up, which I think was brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you. And I would assume it would be exhausting as well for the other person to always have high expectations for everybody. That sounds exhausting. Well, Mort, thank you so much for coming back on the show. We really appreciate it. I think this will be a big eye-opener for a lot of people who maybe had been so focused on love languages in their relationship, and maybe it just wasn't working for them, and they just couldn't find that right love language for their partner. And now they'll just be able to focus on loving their partner entirely, and maybe that will be a better fit for them. So thank you so much for kind of bringing this way of thinking into the show.
You're welcome.
So let's have you wrap up by having you tell our listeners where they can find you online, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. You can find me online at mortfertel.com, and I have a free report there, 7 Secrets to Fixing Your Marriage, which is a good way to get to know me and get a lot of really good information about how to begin to fix your marriage. mortfertel.com.
Excellent. Well, that will be on idopodcast.com as well as on our show notes page. And again, thank you for joining us back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, guys. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, all the links are in the show notes page as well as on the podcast description. And while you're on our website, we encourage you guys to check out our 14-day Happy Couple Challenge. We send you an email for 14 days with simple, doable challenges to help strengthen and improve your relationship. And on our website, we also have a bunch of free resources for your relationship. So we encourage you to check those out. We also have our Love Tribe on Facebook. We encourage you guys to join the tribe and be there for support for each other. If you have questions or just need some relationship advice, we are all here for each other. The group has grown to almost 1,000 people, and we love it. So we hope you guys join that. You can go to Facebook, Love Tribe Fam, and you'll find us right there. And if you are interested in learning more about our flagship course, Spark My Relationship, we hope you guys check it out. We have a special offer that is only for podcast listeners. So you can go to sparkmyrelationship.com/unlock, and you can unlock that special offer and learn more. As always, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.